Hey, good morning. So today is the 12th of March, 2019, and I just want to welcome you into my presence today. And I want to thank you for being available and open to a little more connection today. Um, So recently, I've been thinking about weightlifting and making gains in the gym. I've mentioned in the past that I work out 5 days a week and I love it. I love it. I love being stronger. I love being smarter. I love, just all the enhancement that comes along with working out regularly in the gym, bicycling, running, stair climbing and ladder climbing and weightlifting. Love all those parts of it. And, I am trying to sort of reduce the effects of old age, right? Maintain youthfulness, strength, vitality, positive outlook, positive attitude, right? Continuously doing that. So I came across an article yesterday that talked about protein and its utility or usefulness for weightlifters. And it was, I kind of already knew what was in the article already. It was a clinical study, and it talked about how there were optimal levels of protein for various age groups. And in general, it stated that older men tend to eat less protein and their bodies are less stimulated by protein in terms of muscle synthesis. And I kind of already knew this, but this was the first time that I'd really read the clinical study. And it was a meta study, which means it was a study of studies, and it seemed to be pretty comprehensive. And you know, here's my problem with it all. I mean, first of all, I have no problem with the conclusions of the study. It's just that, for years, I've been focused on eating vegan, or at least eating vegan to the best of my ability. And while it's true, I could be vegan and take in the recommended protein that the study calls for and that allows for optimal functioning. But what it would mean for me is that I don't know. I would be focused on eating a lot of vegan protein foods throughout the day. So anyway, I decided to do an experiment. I'm doing an experiment right now, and so I'm going to transition from eating as vegan as I can to vegetarianism, which technically it would be like an ovo-lacto vegetarianism because I want to test out for myself whether I would see any improvement from increasing my protein intake, and I'm going to use animal protein to help me. And then the reason I'm using animal protein, I mean, I'm a calorie counter too. The reason I'm using animal protein is that animal protein gets me the biggest bang for the buck in the sense that it gives me the most protein macronutrient for the calorie. The fact is that protein foods that are vegan just don't have very high concentrations of protein. And so that ends up meaning is that I have to spend a lot of calories eating high protein vegan foods, more calories than I would like uh, on this experiment. I know, who knows? There are drawbacks to using animal protein. For example, animal protein doesn't have antioxidants. It also doesn't have fiber. I know. And then also, animal protein has contaminants in it. You know, I think it could be anything from antibiotics or who knows what they put in animal protein these days. Um, and there are also other contaminants that, at least when I call contaminants, that come in animal protein, and that is things like saturated fat and cholesterol. And of course, I'm trying to manage my cholesterol too. So it's really this balancing act. I'm only going to do it for about 6 weeks, about a month and a half. We're going to do vegetarianism for 6 weeks and see if there are any improvements that happen. 6 weeks doesn't sound like too long. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm probably going to be eating um, certainly more eggs. I think eggs are going to be the key to doing this experiment. I'm going to be eating, I'm actually going to try to be eating 50 grams extra of protein per day, and we'll see how that works out. I'm not going to be changing my total caloric intake. That'll be the same as it always is. So I think it'll be a pretty good study on myself to see if an extra 50 grams of protein does any good. I don't know. It's very possible that an extra 50 grams of protein could be very beneficial to my body. Protein is really a very essential macronutrient. It helps with, building muscle. Protein. I mean, basically my whole body is made of protein. If you think about it, that's what nucleuses do in cells. They produce proteins through they're continuously producing proteins. My body is made of protein. In fact, my bones. I know people talk a lot about calcium and magnesium when it comes to bone health, but really, your bones are made of protein. Do some research on it. and and my skin, my skin is made of protein. And as I age, my skin will be losing some elasticity. The collagen will be degrading. I want to do as good a job as I can to ensure that the collagen gets built up in the most efficient and effective way that it can. And so, I don't know. The fact is, my body is basically a proteinaceous body. And, here's the thing about older people. They're not stimulated by protein like they were when they were young. And so older people's needs for protein increase. It just does. It's not a choice. It's just a fact. And so I think I might have to start increasing my protein intake. We'll see. I could be mistaken, and I'm open to being mistaken. We'll see if these next 6 weeks, this added 50 grams of protein a day has any effect. We'll see if I'm stronger. We'll see if I make improvements in the gym. See if my muscles get bigger, greater volume. We'll see if I become more powerful in the gym. In fact, really, that's going to be my measure. I have a sense already of how well I function in the gym. I have a sense of how much weight I can lift and the rate at which I increase my lifts. I have a sense of, how fast I can run and the rate at which I can increase my speed and my distance when I run. So we'll see what happens. If it turns out that this extra 50 grams of protein a day helps, then I might just have to be vegetarian and not vegan. I say that with some sadness because I love being vegan. I love it, and I don't want to leave it. But here's the thing, my commitment is to my body first. You know, the strength of my body and my stamina and my mind first. And it's less to philosophical commitments about, um, eating only plant based. You know, that is 100% plant based. It's funny how idealistic I uh, am at times when it comes to food. There was a point in time when I was raw vegan, and I loved being raw vegan. But for some reason, at least at the time, I couldn't sustain it. Who knows? I might give raw veganism a try again, but I probably won't. uh, Eating cooked food is just too enjoyable. So anyway, I'm going to be vegetarian for 6 weeks. It's not the end of the world. I just have to give up on some ideals when it comes to eating, and that's okay. I'm giving up on some ideals and pursuing other ideals. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and vice versa. Anytime you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to something else. And so I'm just going to say yes to a different mix of values. I'm going to say yes to a happy, maybe a stronger and healthier, more vibrant body. At least that's the idea. And at least, I'm proud that I am willing to take action in that direction. Unfortunately, age, time has me in its grip. Biological age has me in its grip, and all I can do is respond. It's about responding. Growing and living and growing is all about responding to one's environment. Internal environment, relating to the health of their body, and external environment, relating to the activities and events that occur outside of your skin. We're all, I love the sun. I love being outdoors, but sometimes it's wintertime and I want to escape the cold. And so I go indoors despite loving the sun. And in this case, I guess I'm trying vegetarianism for a while despite loving veganism. We'll see. I'm hopeful that technology will solve these problems. I'm hoping that there will be plant-based proteins available. You know what? In fact, there are actually quite a lot of plant-based proteins available. I'll do some research into pea protein and other kinds of proteins that are available. Soy protein. I know there's a lot of soy protein isolate out there. We'll do some. I think I'm going to do some research and see what I can do on the soy front. Here's the thing about using protein powders. Personally, I don't care to use protein powders. I guess I could if I wanted to. If I wanted to maintain my vegan stance, I could go protein powder. And there are a lot of soy and pea protein powders out there, and there's all other kinds of protein too. There's hemp protein and other things like that. I'm I have There was a point in my life when I was taking in a lot of protein powder, and I found it somewhat monotonous. I wasn't thrilled by it. It also turned out to be somewhat expensive. And by the way, I just like dealing with whole foods better than manufactured foods anyway. And I like the idea of putting whole foods into my body instead of engineered foods. Anyway, that's kind of the reason I've not decided. It's just more expedient to use animal protein. But you know what? maybe what I'll do is I'll do some research and I'll do some analysis about the cost of pea protein, say, versus egg protein. And, we'll do some thinking about pea protein's availability. And I would definitely like to use pea protein. We'll see how it goes. It's kind of funny. Here's the thing. Human beings, we love to eat. We love food. There's just something about food that is just so compelling to us. Well, it's the source of all of our life, right? It's the source of all of our strength, the source of all of our energy. It's how we keep warm. It's how we feel comfortable and sated and peaceful at the end of the day. So we are, as human beings, we are continually thinking about food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And sometimes snacks. And human beings love food. We are feeders. That's just what human beings are. We have this brain, this massive brain to fuel. By the way, thinking about food, I had an amazing breakfast today. I had like a big bowl of oatmeal. And you might think, oh, oatmeal, that doesn't taste very good. I think I had probably the best bowl of oatmeal I've ever had. It's kind of funny too because I eat oatmeal nearly every morning. It's just a great nutritious start to the day. And the way I prepared my oatmeal was rather unique. I just used water. But here's the key for me. I don't use a lot of water. In fact, I use a whole lot less water than one would expect one would use in their bowl of oatmeal. There's something about oatmeal's texture that I love very much. And if I have just a little bit of water in my bowl of oatmeal, it turns out to be more like a dry oatmeal. It's more like an oatmeal bar than it is a bowl of oatmeal cereal. But I love it. I love the texture, tasting the texture of the oatmeal. And I also added honey and cinnamon and some Splenda sugar that I have. I love it. Loved it. I was in heaven. I was totally blissed out this morning. There's something about honey which is just powerfully good. Now, that's another aspect in which I'm not vegan, regrettably. I know that a lot of people, particularly a lot of vegans, view honey as not vegan. And hey, I can appreciate that. I know. See, the idea is in vegan circles that that using animals for your own purpose is unethical, and that it doesn't matter what that purpose is, because animals have rights to live out their lives in their own way and not compelled to live their lives according to, say, some humans' desire. Hey, I think I can respect that. I can respect that view, and I do respect that view. And for that reason, and I think probably that reason, yeah, that reason, that means that honey is not a vegan food. I get it. I get it. And it makes a lot of sense to me. So here's the problem. I have high standards and I'm somewhat idealistic. And because of that, I also like to be comprehensive. And what that means is that, I can't reach, I struggle even when I was a vegan to call myself vegan because The word vegan really, if you think about it, is a very comprehensive word. Even fabrics, the fabrics you wear in your body, like leather, for example, would not be appropriate. These philosophical positions are just so hard to maintain. It's almost impractical, really. I mean, if you think about it, you can take these vegan principles to the extreme, and it's just not possible. It's not possible, not humanly possible, to live according to those principles 100%. I think, but I still strive to do it. This is the same problem that religion has. Religion espouses certain values and virtues as being important. And when you start thinking about trying your best to align yourself with certain values 100%, you quickly find out that, and this is just the way reality is built, that there's certain values that are at loggerheads with one another. In fact, it's always sort of it's sort of like the freedom versus responsibility dynamic, right? As you could never be 100% unipolar. There's always like this bipolarity where you're balancing values, because you can't 100% optimize one value over another. It's just not possible. And the same is not only is the same true in ethics, the same is true in diet and food. The same is true, in all aspects of life. So, that's what human beings do. We're the great negotiators with life. We're trying to optimize our behavior in our environment. And that's why Emily, I urge you to take a multi-theoretical approach. So what I mean by multi-theoretical is that I want you to entertain different baskets of values. And over time, you'll be experimenting with optimizing one set of values over another set of values. It's just what human beings do, and it's important not to get too wrapped up in preserving one set of values to the exclusion of all others. It's important to be flexible. It's about, exceeding in life, doing well in life is about being flexible. And it's about allowing flexibility, and being okay with being flexible. I mean, the fact is that life is really somewhat chaotic. If you do research in a scientific area called chaos theory, you'll learn that, chaos is a scientific principle that sort of reigns in our world. And what that means is that there are elements of unpredictability that can't be any other way. For example, weather. Weather scientists use supercomputers to predict the weather, based on the inputs from sensors and, outputs from software. And, scientists do their best to predict what the weather's going to be like one day in the future in their forecast, 2 days, 3 days, sometimes even out to 10 days in their forecasts. And they're relatively good, they're relatively accurate. Though, because of the chaotic nature of reality, of our universe, they'd be lucky to do much better than that. It may not ever be possible for them to predict weather 1 month in advance. just because there are just too many variables. And the problem is just too complex. Our simulations just can't handle the complexity. And the fact is that predicting weather is like predicting uh, the outcome of a chaotic process. You know, and our brains do that all the time too. We're constantly assailed by different elements that come into our awareness during the day as human beings, and we respond to those elements. Uh, but and we do our best to sort of predict what tomorrow's going to be like, but or maybe even what it's going to be like a week from now or a month from now. But because chaos reigns in our universe, in our reality, or our ability, our skill at predicting the future is limited. you know so how do we live in a universe that's as chaotic as ours? Well, we just do the best we can. um, there are things in life that we cannot control. And in fact, I would say the majority of things in our life we cannot control. Even there are aspects of our own minds that we can't control. And so, we just do the best we can. We struggle along in a universe where, values are continuously weighed against each other in a multi-theoretical context, in a chaotic world. And when I say chaotic, I'm not using that as sort of an adjective. I'm using that as a noun. Our chaotic universe, you know. Um, yeah, a lot of our world is determined by initial conditions, and those initial conditions can be specified um, to a very precise level. The anyway, I'm getting into physics, but I don't think I will. I don't think I'll get into physics right now. Anyway, as humans, we're doing the best we can. Speaking of doing the best I can, I think what I'm going to do is let's go through some highlights of a book I read recently called The Happiness Makeover by MJ Ryan. And we'll go over some ideas. So the next quote is on page 30. So here we go. The quote states, "This happiness hindrance is so common. Just as I was wondering how to finish this essay, my phone rang. It was a friend who had been house hunting for 6 months. She just made an offer. It had been accepted. She was thrilled. But my realtor said not to get too excited until the signed contract was in hand," she explained. Oh, yeah. So yesterday I was talking about how in our culture there's this unspoken imperative to sort of minimize our excitement and joy in the world. Don't get too happy. It's too much fun. You'll hear people make statements like that. It's kind of funny how we tamper down our expressions of happiness as a rule in our society. Part of being an adult is doing a good job at tamping down our happy and joyful impulses. Since when did that become a standard for adults to live by? I don't know. Why is that the case? Sometimes I wish that the opposite were true. That people in our society were encouraged to be happy when we feel happy, and to be as happy as and to act as happy as we can, when we do happen to be happy. It's so funny. This emotional reservation. Yeah, I think this emotional, when I think of emotional reservation, I think of eras like the Victorian period, right? I, for, I Hey Google, what years were the Victorian period?
The Victorian era lasted from June 20th, 1837 to January 22nd, 1901.
So 1837 to 1901. So that's 1837 to 1901. The Victorian era did not last very long, but it looks about 70 years, um, just before the 1900s. Um, that was a time when there was a lot of emotional constraint. Even before that time, there was a lot of emotional constraint too. I mean, I can imagine human beings put the lid on our emotions a long time ago. And, you know, we're still just emerging from that time period too. Yeah. And, I think it's somewhat sad because I think it represents a loss. It's about hiding how we feel from the world. And I think that's why all of us are really, at least I know a lot of my friends are focused on authenticity. We love to hear about other people's emotional expressions. At least I do. Um, I want to know what's going on in other people's worlds, and being witness to their emotional expressions, you know, um, gives me some, acknowledgement that they're human and I'm human, and it sort of enables a shared connection. It's about being vulnerable and genuine. You know, I think we're all kind of seeking to be more genuine in our with the world in some way. And that's why digital media is so wonderful, is that it really does give people a chance to be more genuine. I mean, here, even in this video that I'm making today, I'm talking about what I want to talk about. You know, I'm being genuine. I'm being vulnerable. I'm letting you know what's on my mind. You know, these are things that stimulate me. They are exciting to me. I'm passionate about them. To me, self-expression is important. It's what makes life interesting and valuable. To put constraints on our emotional expression all the time, just, I don't know, seems like a loss. It seems like a loss. And regrettably, that's what much of life seems to be sometimes. It's just, yeah. Anyway, I kind of wish that it was more appropriate to express yourself emotionally in this world. Okay, so let's move on to the next point, the next highlight. This is on page 52 or 32, and the passage reads: Scientists call looking at those less fortunate downward comparison, and that it's remarkably effective at boosting our happiness. Okay, so this is something I do all the time, downward comparison. I continually compare myself to people who are not doing as well. And funny thing is, this happens pretty much automatically. Um, Now I don't know why I started doing this, but it has already become a habit. So when I'm, say, contemplating you, Emily, my daughter, relatively happy, healthy, intelligent, active, what I do is I make comparisons between me as a parent to this amazing child, which is you, and to parents who have lost their children in death to disease or disability. Um, and I feel better. I feel more grateful to have what I have. I guess what I could do is I could imagine other parents who have, I don't know, like super duper kids. But really, I don't, which is kind of interesting. I really don't spend a lot of time thinking about parents with super duper kids. And there are kids who have super duper parents too, so it goes both ways. Yeah. I'm wondering to myself, does Emily ever think about other kids who might have super duper parents, and does she compare me to those super duper parents? Uh, it's definitely something to contemplate. But for me, really, I do compare myself to the less fortunate. Like the other day, I went to college, my college class, my welding class, and I had struck up a conversation with a friend. Now, my friend is like a full time student, right? And we were talking about what life is like in the workaday world. And, the way I framed our conversation was that, he had a good life. And, you know, that was true and correct. But I think I got the sense that he was longing to have a workaday job. That's right. Why people go to school anyway, and that is to become more and more employable. And I guess I felt grateful that I wasn't merely a student uh, longing to find good work. That I have, thankfully, luckily, found the work that I'm capable of doing and that I'm good at doing, and I got the job, so to speak. And anyway, that is an example of downward comparison. I walked away from that conversation, bolstering his view, but at the same time, uh, I was inwardly, anyway, happy about my own position. Although, let me tell you something, I wouldn't mind being a professional student. I would love to be a professional student. In fact, sometimes I regret that I can't be a professional student. I There are many times during the day when I wish I was a professional student. I wish I could just take class after class after class. It would be wonderful. You know, it's to me it saddens me that I'm only able to take 2 classes per semester. It just doesn't seem like enough. I would much rather take 4 or 5 classes a semester. But I just don't have enough time in the day. 2 classes a semester is a struggle in and of itself. And I'm lucky to get by on 2 classes a semester. Yeah. It's funny how education is such an important part of my life. It's it's a value that I seek to optimize all the time, and gosh, I can only go so far. You know, Sometimes I worry. I'm interested in the I but about the question about whether I would ever retire from work. Personally, I'm not a big fan of retirement at all. I have friends who've retired, and I do not envy their lives very much. It's true they've got a lot of time, but they are also, you know, weak. I I say that in jest, of course, because I'm sure there are amazing things about their lives, things that the travel and the leisure that I can't touch. And perhaps they're going to school full time, and they have that ability to sort of to do something like that. So And I can see the benefits of that. But there are also drawbacks to being like not relied on. I don't know. Here's the thing. I'm an advocate for work. I'm a big fan of work. Um, I don't know what it is, but the Protestant work ethic is just so ingrained in my soul. I uh, I want to continue striving, to continue doing, to be working with my hands and getting the job done continuously. It's just a big part of my upbringing. I think it was rather inadvertent, but or maybe not. Uh, I don't know. For me, the Protestant work ethic definitely rubbed off on me, and I take pride in it. So, I really can't see a time when I would not be working. I know. I think about the possibility of retirement, say in 15 years or whatever, and it's just I can do nothing but shrug it off. I just the idea is almost insulting to me. It's not quite there, but maybe if I could exchange work uh, for making a salary to working as a full-time student, that would be a kind of retirement that um, might actually work for me. Maybe I could seek out a PhD in my retirement. That sounds valuable. Hmm. So that's an idea that I hadn't really considered before. Yeah, I could get a PhD in philosophy or a PhD in psychology. I do have an interest in getting a PhD eventually, but I just haven't had the time, energy, or money to do it. It's a possibility. Of course, I could also work and uh, do night classes to achieve a PhD degree. Now, I don't think I want to do that. That just seems like too much. It's like piling work upon work. I'm not sure that that would be a really healthy thing to do, honestly. Well, anyway, so the Protestant work ethic is something that's really important to me. And one group of people who I admire very much are the Amish. And I really, really enjoy learning about these, I guess, Protestant denominations of Christianity that are really focused on working, like not only the Amish, but also just the Mennonites in general, focus on diligent work as a spiritual practice. Now, I'm not really focused or have much interest in their justifications for, their spiritual justifications for working a lot, but I admire their work, period. That I admire the productivity of their hands and, their drive to continuously improve. Um, so, in fact, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. I'm finding that I'm somewhat reflective this morning. Okay, so this is a highlight out of that book, MJ Ryan's The Happiness Makeover. Page 33 says, "We pay a price for everyone's putting on a happy face. We start believing that life for everyone else is great." Wow, that's a good point. We do pay a price for everyone putting on a happy face. We start believing that life for everyone else is great. There it's kind of interesting. I'm an advocate for positive psychology and happiness, but I also acknowledge, say, the fraudulent nature of acting happy when you're not. And And not only is it sometimes weird, but it's also somewhat dishonest. Um, it's also about hiding. It's also, I mean, just a moment ago, I railed against this idea of being constrained when it comes to um, sort of hiding your positive emotional expressions in society. And at the same time, I am also um, not happy about sort of showing happiness when you're not feeling it. So, I do have an interest in being, I do have uh, an interest in everyone being more authentic and being more genuine. I think that's important. I think that sort of optimistic expression has its place, even when you're not feeling well or good. I think it has its place. In fact, one of the things that I say about optimism is that it's gold. I actually say to myself that optimism is like gold. And why do I say that? I say that because the value of optimism in and of itself, even if it's not a true reflection of how you're feeling inwardly, I think showing optimism is can be exceedingly beneficial, not only to yourself, but to others. It's about exercising confidence, maybe in the face of challenge. I think it can be inspiring and motivating, and I think it goes a long way toward training your mind to operate in ways that you want it to operate. There's like a personal training type aspect to it. Smiling when you may be feeling inwardly sad. I think it's sort of a mixed bag, right? Um, I agree. It is somewhat dishonest, but it's dishonesty with a purpose, and it may be that the purpose is greater. The achievement of the purpose is greater than the sort of fraudulent nature of that kind of emotional expression. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. There is a price to be paid when you're not being authentic. And the question is, are you willing to pay that price? It depends on context, of course. Okay, next comment that I highlighted was on page 33. The next passage. And the passage reads, the more we share them with one another, the less alone we feel, and the more we understand every life is a mix of happiness and sadness. So that's an argument for authenticity. You basically get to learn that every life is a mixture of happiness and sadness. And the other, what, five or four additional emotions life is a mixture of happiness, sadness, anger, disgust. Hey, there's disgust in life. I do not deny it. Um, yeah, fear. Okay, so the next quotation is this on page 38. It reads, Americans become unhappy because their preoccupation with amassing possessions obliterates their loneliness. That's kind of interesting. So, yeah, and this is just a quote, probably from a book that MJ Ryan is talking about. You know, there is, people like to seek out valuable things and collect them, become owners of those things. And that activity is very distracting. It distracts us from our loneliness. It distracts us from our bad feelings, you know? And, a lot of people engage in, I guess what you could call it is retail therapy, right? If you're feeling bad about anything, sometimes what the doctor orders and what is needed is for you just to go shopping. I know I have a feeling that Americans do this a lot, and it's fine, so long as you're shopping in moderation and you can afford whatever it is you're buying. I mean, I've done it myself. Retail therapy is very effective, and I'm glad that I'm able to support that kind of therapy. Therapy in any event is expensive. I mean, you could go to a therapist, you could spend $200 on a therapy session, or you could spend $200 at Macy's. And it's probably debatable about which method is more effective. Um, it is kind of funny. I guess it depends on your mindset. You know, there's a lot to learn about the world. This morning I was just reflecting on the fact that, I read for 30 minutes every morning. And I was asking myself if it makes sense for me to read for a full hour every morning. And while I would absolutely love to read for a full hour every morning, I mean, that's 30 hours of devoted reading a month, which it would be phenomenal. Phenomenal. Um, and I could make it happen if I tried. All I would have to do is go to bed 30 minutes earlier and wake up 30 minutes earlier. I mean, I'm already figuring it out. Well, oh, wow. If I would just go to bed at 8 o'clock p.m. and then wake up at 4 a.m., I could read from between 4 and 5 o'clock a.m. And all it would mean is that I would go to bed at 8:30 every night. Oh, man. 8:30 is rather early, if you ask me. Another strategy would be to read for 30 minutes between 8:30 and 9 o'clock p.m. That actually would work pretty well too. Anyway, let's move on to the next passage. This is a passage that's on page 39, and it reads, "Our hate is not hurting them at all, but our hate is turning our own days and nights into a hellish turmoil." Dale Carnegie. So this is a quote from Dale Carnegie. And here's the facts. When we feel upset or sad or lonely, these are feelings that go on in our own minds only. They don't go on in the minds of other people. Other people are completely oblivious. They're experiencing their own self-generated pain. I experience my self-generated pain. They experience their self-generated pain. And never the twain shall meet. So, it's kind of funny. Sometimes I think, my life is only as painful as I decide that it will be. You know, I have thoughts, and sometimes those thoughts are painful, right? They hurt. Yeah. I have painful thoughts. There are some thoughts in my mind that are painful. And you know what? I also control to what extent I'm exposed to those painful thoughts. Am I exposed to those painful thoughts for 10 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, an hour a day? Well, that's my choice, right? I generated the painful thought. I expose myself and remind myself of the painful thought on a regular basis. My emotional pain is completely generated by me. It's 100% my responsibility. And, that's pretty amazing to think about it, to contemplate it. Here, a lot of my pursuit of self-development psychology is to reduce the emotional pain that I'm exposed to. But the fact is that it is me, myself, who continually sort of subjects myself to emotional pain. I do it even though I might not do it on purpose. I am ultimately the cause and ultimately responsible for my own emotional pain every time. And not only am I responsible for like some of my emotional pain, I am literally responsible for all of my emotional pain. And you know what? I'm also responsible for all of my emotional pleasure, all of my emotional happiness. So, when you think about life in that way, it sort of puts things in perspective. Like, wow, you know, if I say that my life is hard, all I'm really doing is sort of in making an indictment against myself and my own choices about how to live in my own mind. Well, anyway, I think I'm done, at least for today. Emily, I just want to thank you for being a part of the discussion today. Thank you for being sort of a witness to our conversation. Thank you for being willing to learn and being curious about what's on my mind. I really appreciate it. I deeply appreciate it. And I want to thank you so much for your presence. And I hope you have a wonderful day today. Today is Tuesday. And let's see, I plan to go running at the gym today. We'll see how that goes. Other notable things, I don't know. I'm calling in regularly. I'm on call for jury duty. We'll see what happens there. Um, I'm looking forward to a 3-day weekend this weekend, and I'm wondering what I'm going to do. I need to do some planning. Uh, by the way, I've really been enjoying using my iPad Pro. I just want to let you know. And, I've been contemplating the idea of buying you an iPad Pro. I want to get to know about what computers you might have access to, whether they're old or new, whether they're Microsoft operating system or Apple operating system, whether they're what form factor your computer is, whether it's a laptop or a tablet or a desktop computer. You know, when I gather this information, I'll be better able to decide whether it makes sense for me to get you an iPad Pro as a gift, maybe for uh, your birthday, this coming June. You'll be 15 years old. Oh my gosh. Time flies. 15. I can't believe it. I can't believe my daughter is going to be 15 years old in just a few months, too. It's March. That's just 3 months. You'll be 15 in 90 days. Oh my goodness gracious. Sakes alive. I'm having trouble even contemplating that fact. Well, anyway, girl, I'm so glad you're growing older and blossoming into this young woman who'll be taking over the world. And I hope you keep me in your thoughts. And I guess I'll talk to you later, huh? Take care, girl. I want you to know that I love you, that I care for you, that what you think is important to me. I want you to know that your emotional pain, even though it's generated by you in your own mind, is important to me. I'm curious to know about your own emotional feelings, your emotional status. And I'm hoping that you are treating yourself gently, with compassion, with a sense of kindness, with self empathy, um, and are not too harsh and judgmental about yourself and your behavior. Um, anyway, maybe we can talk about it. I'd be open to having a discussion about the subject. Well, goodbye, little one.